Okay, here is our cookbook stand. To reiterate, it was powder coated with a white base from the factory. I sprayed this blue Krylon over it because that's the base color I liked. Now I've got this snazzy stencil that I bought online for about 15 bucks, and we're going to use that to powder coat our lobster onto here. Now you would think and hope this would be easy. I spent a lot of time, and maybe it's just because I'm not very good at this. I don't know. I don't think so. Trying to get this to work, and that's one reason why I wanted to make this video, is to share it with you guys. Basically, the only way I can get this to work is with adhesive, and with a special type of adhesive. Taping it down will reveal cracks. Using magnets, which I did, would reveal cracks. Using weights of any kind, or you're trying to use gravity and air pressure to hold it down, couldn't get it to work. I tried it with wet paint when you're rolling it on and brushing it on. I tried it with regular old spray paint, and none of it would work, again, unless I used an adhesive to really hold down all the lines. Now this is a little bit more fine of a stencil, or complicated of a stencil, than you may need, so you may not have to go to this degree of length. But I also now like this method because it is reliable, and it doesn't, I don't want to ruin this workpiece. It's very annoying to try to take off layers of paint and repaint it and have it look decent. So it's a bit of a hassle. So no real secrets here, just some trial and error that led me to this conclusion. With that note, here is, in my opinion, this is the spray you want to use. 3M Repositionable 75 spray adhesive. There's a link in the video description to buy this on Amazon. It's not particularly expensive, and this stuff I found works the best because most adhesives will hold the stencil down. That's not the problem. The problem is when you peel the stencil off, will it leave a gummy residual residue that is difficult or not possible to really clean off, and it can either affect the feel of the product or it can affect the look, or both. So that's the first big trick that I wanted to share with you guys, is using this stuff, which I'll show in a second. The second one has to do with when we powder coat it, just how to be careful when you go from spraying the powder out to getting it in the oven and taking the stencil off and so forth. So order of operations. We're going to spray the back side of our stencil with our 3M adhesive. Not too much, doesn't require a lot. And we're going to come over and we're going to use the top edge and we're going to line it up and we're going to lay it down here, and then we'll press it down. After that, we'll also press it down with a flat block to make sure we've got everything down evenly and I'm not putting my fingerprints all over it. We'll then do our powder coat, and then when we do our powder coat, what we'll do is we will very carefully pull the stencil off. Usually I do it upside down. What can happen, because the powder will not have been cooked, so it'll just be loose powder. If you're a jerk at all, what happens is some of the powder will fall off onto the side of it, which is a problem for two reasons. One, it's outside your stencil. You've got to color in between the lines here, folks. The second problem is you've got some adhesive over here, so it's going to leave a nasty, the powder's not going to come off, and it's basically, it's not acceptable. You can't do it. Now this isn't going to be a perfectly cut, perfectly crisp stencil. There'll be small amounts of fuzz around it, but when I say that, I mean really not much at all, especially if we do it right. So let's dive in. This is going to be a very rare example of me spraying any sort of an aerosol inside. We've got high ceilings here. I'll actually turn a fan on or leave the room, and I'm only spraying a very small amount. But seriously, I hate breathing in aerosol stuff. Just not good. That's all it takes. Okay. Now what I do is I get down low, and you'd be amazed. You can really see easily when anything is not laid down. In fact, I see a little point right there. That fixed that. Now that might be an example where our stencil isn't perfect. I could use more adhesive than I spray, but don't like to, and I think this is going to work out great. So now we're okay. No rush right now. We can get our powder coat set up and spray this. It's no real rush to get it done. If your stencil covers your whole part, you're in luck. If, like me, you've got exposed areas, you're just going to use some painter's tape, cover those off. We'll take that tape back off before we mess with the stencil. Okay, we're almost ready to powder coat. Last thing, where do you connect your ground? You don't have any choice, folks. You need to get it somewhere, and it's got to be conductive. I'm not an expert, but in my experience as a layman powder coating, again, sort of in the home shop, it's all the more important because you aren't working with a bare metal here. You need the electromagnetic charge to go through existing powder coat, or in our case, spray paint as well. So if I were doing these in production or higher quantity, what I would do is make use of our hole right here, because that hole is going to have a washer over it. So if it didn't have paint, the customer wouldn't see that. That would be the better way to go. What I'm going to do instead is just use a really small spot down here on the inside lip. Customer's not really going to see it, and what I can do afterward is just fill it in with either some of the spray paint itself by just spraying some in a little cup and using a toothpick or Q-tip and dipping it in there, or even a blue Sharpie. You're not really going to notice. Pinch it down there, make sure those teeth of your clamp are biting in. You can feel that it's secure. Now we're good. I did one last inspection, and the paper towels or the tape had pulled up a little bit of dust, which I wasn't happy with. Again, maybe you don't care about this, but painting and a lot of things are like this are all about the prep. The better prep you do, the better the actual work will look. Painting itself doesn't take too long, but I can just see a few specks of dust. A little bit of light air gets the trick. Make sure it doesn't raise your stencil up. Okay, painting time. Remember, powder coating, it's not like a wet spray paint where you're trying to actually spray the material on. You're trying to create a mist of powder near the part, and the electromagnetism will pull it onto the part. And with stencils like this, I try to be even more conscious of it, because we want it to look good and we want it to look even, and we try not to apply too much. More is what's going to, I think, in my opinion, cause problems. It's either going to want to creep under the stencil, or, as you see, the real trick here is going to be when we take the stencil off, making sure, because we have to take this off before we bake it, making sure it doesn't fall over onto, you don't have it mounted up and it falls over and creates fuzzy lines everywhere. So we're using our Eastwood hot coat gun here. I've got some bright red powder. Let's go. Okay, the claw's a little light. Boy, that looks pretty good. I'm going to call that good. Now, again, I am not an expert. I'm a guy who does this, enjoys it, and I think I figured out the way to do this best. Looking forward to seeing what folks have to say in the comments below. Here is what I do now. I'll lower the camera. I take the part and I go upside down with it like so, and I tap it. I'm trying to knock off any excess type of powder. We seem to do a darn good job of getting this to be just a fine enough layer that it should be okay. Before, if you apply too heavy, you'll see some fall off. I think this one's okay though. So now we can take our rough mask stuff off. I'll fast forward through this part here, but we're just peeling off our painter's tape. Now's a good time to mention you should go wash your hands so you're not getting powder over the part elsewhere. Now when you go to peel the stencil off, and anytime you're working here, no jerking, no jolting, no bumping. I'm going to hold the part securely down to the table and just gently peel stuff off. You don't want to jar the part. Now here is the absolute make or break moment. And again, I'm going to lift the part up and do this upside down. So if any powder does fall or move, I've got a better chance of gravity letting it drop to the ground rather than back onto this part. It's also critical right now. You need to wash your hands. Again, don't want to transfer any dirt or powder coat from your hands to the part at this point. You need to have your oven preheated, ready to go. And then you need to have, however you're going to hold the part in the oven, ready to go as well. I'm going to hang it from a rack hook hole. So I want to have that rack ready. As you can see here, we're going to walk the part right over and then stick it in the oven. You want to minimize any disruptions or hassles. You want no fans on, no wind blowing. You kind of want to focus at this point on to get it in the oven without any disruptions. Looks phenomenal with one exception. We've got some residual powder around the edges here. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but when I was pulling that stencil off with this lighting I'm using for filming, you could see the powder kind of burst off of the stencil. And that's why you need to do this upside down or in a way that pulls the powder away. That looks phenomenal. We're not out of the clear yet. I need to get this brushed off, which I'll do with a paintbrush. I've got one almost within reach here. No sudden movements, folks. Pretty easy to do. So on that note, you should have a paintbrush ready in case you've got to do this as well. I'm really happy with so far how this turned out. Just see if we can get it in the oven without screwing it up. Oh man, guys, this is really cool. Okay, to the racks. Let me try to move the camera as well. When I was experimenting with this and learning how to do it, this is where I screwed up the most parts. It's just too easy to jerk the part or cause some powder to be dislodged, and then you've got to go back and either patch it up with Q-tips and toothbrushes, which is very difficult, or take an air gun, blow all the powder coat off and start over. Okay, 20 minutes is up. I pulled it out of the oven just to let it cool. It is now plenty cool. Let's go back to the bench, take a closer look. Okay, let's throw the legs on real quick before we take a final look at how she turned out. I'm using on these a metric screw, as you know from when we tapped it, and it's called a cheese head screw, and I'd never heard of them until about 5 years ago, and I saw them and I really liked the look of them. It's a very clean look, and it was difficult to find. It's the one example of a product that McMaster doesn't even sell. MSC does sell them, and so I keep some on hand for projects like this. And there we have it, folks. The Red Lobster dual powder coated stencil cookbook stand. Brackets look great. Turns out great. I would put a cookbook on it right now, but I don't own one. So that is ready to ship out, hopefully with a happy recipient. That's all for today's Wednesday Widget, folks. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. Hope you guys are able to use the powder coating skills here and stencils to run with it. If you're interested here, stay tuned. After I'll do I'll do an outro take here with some of the bad examples I did when I was trying to learn this, some of the bad adhesives and so forth. Otherwise, I appreciate the likes, the comments, the shares, the thumbs up. Take care and see you soon. Thanks, folks.